dedication and through the support of people who love you best in the world, you show every single one of us and remind every single one of us that actually we might be called to run in the face of some danger as well. We might be called to step up in ways that we had never expected to have to step up. You know, being from Pennsylvania, you can't get out of a conversation with me without bringing up a Pennsylvania reference. And so I'm going to start there. I think a lot about Gettysburg. And not just because the current president has fired the folks who were supposed to be touring around Americans to come see these hallowed grounds, but I think about it because of some remarks that I gave there a number of years ago when I ran for the United States Senate. I said there something that I want to repeat to you all tonight. Democracy requires something of us. Hear me on that. Democracy requires something of us. And so we should be very clear that yes, we live in a moment of chaos. That yes, the chaos that we are facing as a nation is exacerbated by the fact that these people also have no clue what the hell they're doing. And so when you line up chaos, corruption, and then you put in a little dash of incompetence, you get the toxic mess that we find ourselves in right now. And I know that if you are like me, you are scared. I know that if you are like me, you are worried. And I also know that if you are like me, you are thinking every single day about the people you love best in the world and the type of future that they're going to have in this country that, by the way, was already great and remains great. And what happens sometimes in moments of worry is that people want to find a savior that's going to come and fix it. So if you came here tonight under any illusion that, well, the vice chair of the DNC is coming and he's coming here with a plan, y'all. And he's coming tonight and he's going to announce to the Cape May Democrats that when that guy lands back in our country with his bribery plane, that he's going to get one of those Teslas, and he's going to ride off into the sunset and resign in shame. I wish I was here tonight to tell you that. I wish I was here tonight to tell you that. We can dream. But we got to dream big. But what I am here tonight to tell you is that there is no one person that is going to save us in this moment. But here is the good news. We don't need anybody to save us if we recognize we can save ourselves. As Democrats, we have to have a hard conversation about that, about what leadership looks like, about the type of leadership that we need in this moment. And so often when we think about leadership, we externalize it. We focus on a couple of people who have big platforms and get interviewed on cable TV. But the change that we need to see in our country and this type of sustained action that will move us in a positive direction can never be driven by one person, quote unquote, leader from the top. Because what good leaders do, what great leaders do, is to remind you that the person that you have been waiting for is on the front camera of your phone. The person that you have been waiting for is you all along. And let me tell you why I say this. This is not just like hopium. This is grounded in history. I've been thinking a lot about history in this moment. Thinking a lot about it. We all know that would-be tyrants, dictators, would-be kings, they actually have a playbook. So as uncertain as this moment is, there's a lot of certainty in what they do. A part of what they do is hollow out the civil service and experts. That's the first thing they do. Because they don't want people who know what the hell they're talking about at the highest levels of government. Because when you have actual scientists at the Department of Health and Human Services, and not a guy who is so dumb to go swim in a bacteria-laced lake, you start to see that maybe these people aren't as smart as they look. So they have to get rid of those people who say don't go swim where there's like E. coli. Let me just make an aside. Don't go swim where there's E. coli in the lake. I just want to highlight that. So that's a part of what they do. A part of what they do is to try to distract us with bigotry and hatred and nonsense. It is a tale as old as time. They want to say to you, well, that person looks a little bit different than you. You might not trust them. They want to try to divide us up by race, by religion. They want to try to divide us up by who we love. They want to try to divide us up with whatever shiny object they can throw out. A friend of mine who's a congresswoman said something to me that I said, girl, I'm going to steal this. She said that whenever you have somebody who is a leader and they tell you to focus on an issue that is small or a group of people that has a small population, you need to always ask why. Because it's those people that are telling you to be distracted over here so that they can pick your damn pockets. And here's the reality. They want us to hate our neighbors, to be afraid of the people in our communities, so that while we're arguing amongst ourselves, they can cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security to give a $3.5 trillion tax cut to people who are already well off and well connected. That is what they're doing right now as we sit in this room. That's what they're doing. So a part of what you've heard me say they do is they want to take away expertise, anybody who knows anything about anything. They want to distract you with shiny objects. And the other part of the strategy is to try to rewrite history. And we should be very clear the way that we engage in it as well. Because when we tell the stories of people who stood up in moments of crisis, we tell that story and truncate it to highlight a couple of people because that's easier to tell the story. But we should be very clear about how America, in all of our greatness, has existed for almost 250 years. It's not because one or two people popped up to lead us in moments of crisis. It's because Americans have always recognized that this democracy, as messy as it is, as painful as it can be, as incomplete as it is ours. And I don't know about you, but I think it's worth fighting for. I think it's worth fighting for. I think in this moment about the heroes of Seneca Falls who understood that women had every right to be equal, full participants in this democracy. And we should be very clear that the women who won the right to vote, they didn't have a vote. That's not how they got it. They didn't have a seat in Congress. They weren't elected to a damn thing. But what they understood is that the people are always more powerful than the folks who consider themselves in power. And so they engaged in hunger strikes. They engaged in marches. They tied themselves to the gate of the White House to decide that things are going to be different. And so when we tell that story, we talk about just a couple of suffragettes. But we should be very clear, there were so many women, some whose names are lost to time, who weren't elected to a damn thing, but who didn't allow that fact to strip them of their power. I think often about the brave folks at Stonewall, who stood up and fought back because they understood that a country this great doesn't have to limit people by who they love or who they are or how they show up in this nation. And certainly on this 60th anniversary of the March on Edmund Pettus Bridge, all of us think about the great icon and lion of the House of Representatives, John Lewis. As we should. But we should be very clear about the reality of what happened on that bridge that day. It was not just John Lewis on the bridge. It was over 600 people who showed up on the bridge that day. And we should be very clear. They did not know how the story was going to turn out. We benefit from hindsight. We benefit from knowing that they showed up on the bridge that day, that marches happened after, and that this nation began to reckon with the fact that we were holding people out of fully participating in our democracy in our communities. All the people who showed up on that bridge knew for certain was that there were dogs at the end of that bridge. All they knew for certain is that there were state troopers armed to the gills at the end of that bridge telling them you better not cross. All they knew for certain was that there was a guy named George Wallace who said segregation now, segregation forever. That's all they knew for sure. And so I don't want you to just idolize the people who were on the front of the line. There were 600 people who were homemakers. They were lawyers. They were faith leaders. People who lost their livelihoods by showing up that day. They did not march with a guarantee that they were going to be victorious. Why do I tell you that? Because too many of us say, I only want to get involved if I know we're going to win. I only want to show up to the march if I know that once I make that phone call to my congressman, they're going to vote the right way. I only want to write the letter if I know the Senate is going to block the bill. But we don't do the work that we do because we know the outcome. We do the work that we do because we know it's at stake. Because we know it's on the line. Because we know it's worth fighting for. That's why we have to do the work that we do. Now in this moment, when we're trying to rebuild the Democratic Party to be a strong party that can meet this moment, I want to be very clear about this. And most people are sitting down, so don't nobody pass out on me. But good news, you got some first responders. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. I am not a Democrat. Hear me on this. I am not a Democrat because I hate Republicans. Why do you hear me on this? I am not a Democrat because I hate the president. I'm a Democrat because I know a strong Democratic Party is the only hope we have to ensure that we pass this democracy on to the next generation. Because a strong Democratic Party that stands up for workers, that stands up for seniors, that stands up for young people is the only hope we have for communities that are strong, for communities that can thrive, for communities that can endure. Why do I say that? I grew up in a working poor family in North Philly. My dad was trained as a social worker right at Temple University where I met my dear friend, Janie Shaker. He was lucky enough that one day a cute little thing named Kelly Kenyatta walked on in, my mom. Now they got together and had me. And I like to say that I hit the parental jackpot and that I got the best parents, okay? Second only to yours, who I think were fantastic. But the issue with my parents, as incredible as they were, is that they hated each other. They did, it's true. It's true. I was there, I promise you, they did. And so what that meant for me in brass tacks is that they separated when I was young. I got my first job at 12 years old washing dishes at a little restaurant to help my mom have a little bit of wiggle room. We lived 5 or 6 different places by the time I graduated high school. And as tenuous as things felt all the time, when my parents found themselves in between work, they had access to unemployment because Democrats fought for it. When we went to the grocery store and things were tight and we needed to depend on food stamps, we were able to keep food on the table because Democrats fought to create and defend the SNAP program. I told you we moved around, but when we had somewhere to lay our head, we were able to do it because Democrats fought for affordable housing and to make sure we built up HUD. And some of you may know about it, but I only had health care because of a little program called CHIP that I will remind you, Democrats fought for and won for our kids. And so even though I buried both of my parents by the time I was 27, because they didn't have access to the type of holistic health care that everybody deserves, I can look at every aspect of my life and see the fingerprints of Democrats who had no idea a kid named Malcolm Kenyatta would be born in North Philadelphia, but what they knew is that every kid deserved access to health care, and they were willing to fight for it. What they knew is that every kid deserved access to a high-quality public education where we pay our teachers, and so they fought for it. Because they understood that if you fall on hard times, we ought not throw you out. We ought to give you access to unemployment and the opportunity to get a good family-sustaining job. Democrats fought for that. And we have to remind ourselves of that. Because Democrats, if we're honest, there is a well-worn cottage industry that exists of crapping on Democrats. You know it's true. And folks, we've gotten so good at it that we crap on ourselves before anybody else gets a chance. Like, we don't even have to wait for the bully to stuff us in the locker. We stuff ourselves in the locker. But I think we ought to get off out of the locker. I think we ought to dust ourselves off. I think we ought to remember who the hell we are as Democrats and fight like hell for the country that we love. That's what I think we ought to do. That's what I think we ought to do. Now, I've been saying this everywhere that I can for the people who say, well, Malcolm, what's the Democrats' message? I want you to leave with 3 words. Make life better. That's what the Democrats are about. Democrats at our best believe that we ought to make life better for workers and working people by making it as easy as possible for them to organize and join a union. We make life better for those workers by giving Americans a raise and finally raising the minimum wage to at least $15. We make life better for people by building affordable housing and making it attainable for that young family to buy a home that becomes the cornerstone of their life. We make life better for young people so they can go to that fully funded school that I mentioned and not have to hide under their damn desks because they're worried about a school shooter. We make life better for folks who are sick so they can go to the damn doctor and fill the prescription when they leave the appointment. What an idea. And then we make life better for our seniors So that when you've worked your tail off your entire life, you can retire with a level of dignity and decency. And so I am willing to do the hard work to make life better for everybody in this nation. Because we have a guy who has called us great and craps on the country every single day. And we see for over 100 days, he has done everything he could, not to make life better, but to make it worse. And I would ask rhetorically, but does it make us great as a nation to rip away health care for 14 million people? Does that make us great? Does it make us great to say to people who paid into Social Security their entire life that it's a Ponzi scheme and that we're going to steal your benefits? Does that make us great? Does it make us great to say to our allies that we're not going to have your back and we're going to align ourselves with North Korea and Russia? Does that make us great? No. What the hell is going on? This is the greatest gift that we have to live in this country. It's a great gift. And be under no illusion. A black man in this country. I know exactly what it means to live in a country that doesn't feel like it always loves you back. All of you know it in the different ways that you've lived, how hard you've worked, and you've seen ceilings and barriers thrown in your way. All of us have. But in this moment, we don't walk away from what we have built. We don't walk away. We don't allow this guy to make us afraid of each other or afraid of him. I have said this before, and Fox News reported it like it was a gotcha, but I'm going to say it again tonight. America doesn't have a good relationship with kings. And I don't know about you, but I am not bowing to a damn king. And I'm not kissing the ring of a king. I'm not doing it. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week. I'm an American, and I understand that our Constitution starts with 3 words that we are going to make him remember this November, that we're going to make him remember in 2026. We the people. Not them, the billionaires. We the people. Not them, the corporations. We the people. And certainly not them, the emperor, king, or whatever the hell else he wants to call himself. We the people. So let's do the hard work, Democrats, of remembering who we are. Let's do the hard work of recognizing that leadership is not about one person, but it's about all of us. Let's do the hard work of remembering our history and what it has always meant in this democracy. And let's do the hard work to remember that democracy requires something of us. And I am doing whatever it takes, and I know all of you are willing to do whatever it takes to make sure this experiment in self-government doesn't die on our watch. God bless you. Thank you so much. Mr. Chair.